Take two, which means nothing to you because I deleted take one and nobody will ever see it. That's how bad it was. I gave an example that was similar to 4 times 3x plus 2, but it was terrible. I got 3 minutes into the video and decided I just needed to start over. So here's me starting over. Today's lesson is about factoring, which is the opposite of distributing. It's the undoing of the distributive property. So let's review what distributing is. You should all know this. We did it yesterday. My daughter's in 4th grade at Sycamore and she's doing it right now. So you should have had distributing. Distributing is when you're multiplying something by a parenthesis. You got to multiply that thing by everything inside of the parenthesis. Remember these arrows? Our teacher's having her draw the arrows right now. 4 times 3x and 4 times 2. That 4 gets multiplied by everything inside the parenthesis. So 4 times 3 is 12, don't forget about the x, and 4 times 2 is 8. So that's how you would distribute that problem. To factor this, you would work backwards. So when you have to factor, you're going to start here. You're going to have a problem that looks like this, and it's going to say factor it, and you're going to have to end up here. So factoring starts here and works backwards. Distribute starts here and works that way. So they go in opposite directions. It's kind of like adding and subtracting are opposites, multiplying and dividing are opposites. Distributing and factoring are the opposites. They undo each other. So let's undo this to get it back to here. To do that, you have to find what is called the GCF. And I know you guys have seen those 3 special letters next to each other before, but do you remember what they mean? That's right. It means greatest common factor. Good job in the back row. Greatest common factor. What is the biggest number that goes into both of these evenly? And when I say biggest number, I mean the biggest whole number, so not 5.5, even though that doesn't work for either one of them. But what I mean is don't use decimals or fractions. Use whole numbers. What's the biggest whole number that goes into both of these? Oh, look, it's 4. It's right there. So 4 goes into both those numbers evenly. So we're going to pull a 4 out, and we're going to have our parentheses. Now we have to build what goes inside the parentheses. So we have to ask ourselves, what do we multiply 4 by? What are we going to put right here? We're going to multiply 4 by whatever we put here, and it's got to equal 12. That's a 3. But technically it has to equal 12x, so don't forget your x. And then what do we multiply 4 by to make it equal 8? 2. All right, this is going to seem real easy because the answer was right there. But when the answer is not there and you have to think it through in your own head, it gets a little more difficult. So let's try one of those. Let's say we've got 15x minus 33. Okay, what's the biggest number that goes into both of those evenly? Anybody know? Anybody maybe in the 3rd row or the 3rd seat back from the left? Anybody have 3 on their mind? Oh, that's right, it is. It's 3. Okay, so 3 is the biggest number that goes into 15 and 33. So you pull a 3 out. How many times does 3 go into 15? How many times you got to multiply 3 by to make it equal 15? 5 times. So that's a 5x. How many times does 3 go into 33? 11 times, so you got to multiply it by 11, and it's got to be a negative 33, so make sure it's a minus 11. So that's how you factor. On this test, they worded the factoring problems so that they look more difficult, but they're actually easier because they're telling you what that number is. They're telling you what the GCF is. So how do they do that? They do that with the perimeter of a shape. So let's start with a triangle. They're going to tell you that each side of this triangle is, say, 3x plus 2. So what is the, let me specify here, all these shapes that they're going to give you are regular, which means that every side is the same. Every side is the exact same length on all these shapes that you're going to have. So if one side is 3x plus 2, then every side is 3x plus 2. So perimeter, let me write that down. Perimeter is adding up all the outside sides of a shape. So like if you wanted to put a fence around the perimeter of your property, you would put a fence all the way around the edge of your property. Perimeter means all the way around the outside. If you're going to do that, you'd have to measure how far is it all the way around the outside of your yard. Perimeter is measuring the length around the outside of a shape. So you got to add up all the sides. You would measure, along the front of your yard. You would measure along the side, along the back, and along the other side. And then you would add those four numbers together. You add up every side. Well, here we have three sides. So we would add all those up. 3x plus 2, 3x plus 2, 3x plus 2. That's our three sides. We're going to add all those together. 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 9. So the perimeter is 9x plus 6. Now remember, there's a better way to do addition when you're adding the same thing every time. It's called multiplication. So instead of adding 3x plus 2 three times in a row to end up at 9x plus 6, you're better off just saying 3 times 3x plus 2. The shortcut for addition is multiplication. So now you distribute. What's 3 times 3? 9. What's 3 times 2? 6. And you end up at the same place with less writing. You just multiply it by 3 instead of adding it together 3 times. Okay, now that gets me to what the problems are actually going to look like. They are not going to give you the sides and ask you to find the perimeter, because that would be distributing. How did we just find the perimeter there? We distributed 3 times 3x plus 2. But remember, this is a factoring unit, so we're going to work backwards. They're actually going to give you the perimeter and ask you to find the length of one side. So now we're going to work backwards. So here's a perimeter for you. 12x plus 15. If the perimeter is 12x plus 15 and you have to find one of the sides, that could be a little confusing. If I didn't go over this with you and you just saw that problem on the test today, most of you would probably get it wrong, because it's like, what are you talking about? 12x plus 15? What does that even mean? How am I supposed to find one side? You never even taught me this. This is ridiculous. So now I'm going to teach it to you. If the perimeter is this, that's all three sides added together. So the reason I tell you that the way they word this looks tricky, but it's actually easier, is because they give you the shape. So you know how many sides a triangle has. It has 3. So that's the number that's going to go on the outside of your parenthesis. That is the greatest common factor in these. How many number of sides you have, that's your greatest common factor. So 3 is our greatest common factor. We're going to say 3 times whatever one side is going to equal the perimeter. We're working backwards. So 3 times what equals 12? 4. 3 times what equals 15? 5. So there you go. Every side was 4x plus 5. That's the length of one side. Every side is that length, but they just want to know what is one of them. All right, if that didn't make sense, let's try a square. I'll leave that one there so you can see both at the same time. So let's say we have a square, and the perimeter, which I'll just call PER, for perimeter is 20x plus 16. All right, and they want to know the length of one side. Well, how many sides does a square have? Anybody? Anybody? That's right, 4. So 4 is our greatest common factor. 4 times one side. This, whatever is in the parentheses, is one side. We're going to factor out a 4 from our perimeter because we added something together 4 times in a row to get this perimeter. So we're going to pull out a 4. See the pattern? How many sides there are in the shape? That's your greatest common factor. That's what you pull out. 3 sides in a triangle, pull out a 3. 4 sides in a square, pull out a 4. So you pull out a 4. 4 times what is 20? 5. 5x. 4 times what is 16? 4. 4 times 4 is 16. That's the length of one side. This is your answer. That's the length of one side of the square. That's the length of one side of the triangle. You just learned how to factor today. You should all feel very smart because you are. Good job.